You're listening to Don't IEP Alone with special education advocate Lisa Lightner. For more information about Lisa, the IEP Toolkit, and more ways we can help you in your process, go to adayinourshoes.com. Now back to the show with your host, Lisa.
Good morning. Lisa Lightner here. I have a meeting in Kennett in about an hour, so I have to leave in about an hour. And I'm caught up with what I wanted to prepare, so I thought I would hop on because my DMs are on fire again today, as is my email, and a lot of distraught parents on Facebook posts as well. So I thought I would just hop on and try to offer some reassurance because, as you guys know, I have a disabled child too. I rely on IDEA. I rely on civil rights protection. I rely on Medicaid. So everything that is going on affects me personally, not just the people I serve in my business. So I am concerned. And I don't want to sound dismissive, but I've entered this time period, this 4-year time period, which 48 months, we're 2 months in, 46 months to go. I've entered this with kind of a different mindset than I had last time. So honestly, I lost more sleep over my March Madness bracket yesterday than I did this executive order. Bracket got busted. I had Kansas and Missouri going much further than the first round. But anyway, but here's why I'm not completely losing my mind over this executive order. And man, do I have really bad hair. So the first thing is that remember that they've told us what they were going to do, right? Project 2025 was published long ago. It's actually been in existence for decades. They just keep changing the name of it. But they made it very clear during the campaign that this is our playbook. This is what we're going to do. So all the different organizations that support us and want our kids, want to advocate for our kids and things like that, they've had their lawsuits and their plan of action developed already. There's lawsuits just waiting to be filed, right? Because they told us this is what they were going to do. So, of course, COPA filed a lawsuit, I believe last week or the week before. I'm assuming that they are going to, I'm not a lawyer, I don't play one on the internet, but I am assuming that they are going to, what's the word I'm looking for? Like edit, add an addendum. Because I know that it addressed some of these issues, but it was prior to the executive order being actually written and signed. So I'm assuming that they're going to alter theirs, and that is still going to stand. I am assuming that the ACLU has things written that they're going to file. There's a coalition of about 24 governors. So we're talking about half the country here. And if we're talking about population, we're talking about more than half the country. But there's a coalition of governors at the ready, and they are ready to file lawsuits. If anything, we should be mad about the tremendous amount of resources that this guy is wasting by trying to circumvent the laws. If you look over his 50-year history of business, this is what he does. He files lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit until people just crumble because they can't afford the lawsuits anymore. It's what he's done his entire career. And so now he's forcing the reverse, right? All this stuff has to go through the courts, but that costs money. The other couple of things is that I've looked back at the history of a couple of things. One being Watergate, and one being 2017 and 2018, when they kept threatening and they kept proposing bills to remove Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, which my child also relies on, and probably yours too. All of us do, right? The pre-existing conditions, like, that existed. Remember, we used to be able to get kicked off health plans. But if you remember in 2017, 2018, they tried to repeal that. When I look back over those events, at the time, of course, I was a baby during Watergate. At the time for those folks, I'm sure it felt very urgent. I know in 2017 and 2018, when we were at risk of losing Obamacare and Medicaid, it felt very urgent. When I look back now at Facebook posts, that whole thing went on for more than 2 years. So we can't just keep up this sense of urgency all the time and everything has to happen now. And oh my gosh, and your adrenaline's going. That's not sustainable. And we're all going to burn out, and we can't burn out. We are needed. Our kids need us more than ever. So we can't burn out. So just for perspective, remember that these things don't happen in a day. It's going to take months to years to go through the courts and all that. The other thing is that of course, the modern U.S. Department of Education was formed by Jimmy Carter. And he lost that election, not because of this issue. He signed the bill, but of course it had to go through Congress. But it was formed in 1980. Of course, Reagan took office in 1981. And this was one of his signature agenda items, was that he was going to dismantle the Department of Education. Ronald Reagan was also wildly popular at times, much more popular than our current president, who is underwater with his approval ratings, which means that more people disapprove of what he's doing than approve of what he's doing, which is going to be my next point. But anyway, so Ronald Reagan tried to dismantle the U.S. Department of Education, and he was unable to do it. Times were different. Of course, he didn't try to circumvent the laws and just say, oh, well, I'm going to write an executive order. He tried to get the votes and bills in Congress, and he couldn't do it. But if someone is popular and as well liked as him couldn't do it, I don't think that this current administration can do it, because we've already seen, they fire all these people and then 2 weeks later they bring them all back. So they're losing court case after court case on this. I don't expect. I expect it to be a disruption. So I don't want to minimize or dismiss anyone's real concerns. I expect that there's going to be a disruption. There's going to be a disruption in services. There's going to be a disruption in morale at all levels. There's going to be a disruption in funding. And that's what concerns me a lot more than these actual agencies being demolished, is the funding piece. But right now, we're sitting at almost record lows as far as the percentage of IDEA funding, which of course was supposed to be 40% in 1975. It's never been above 20. And right now, I think it's sitting at 8 or 9%. So that's a significant amount of money when people are already stretched and school districts are already maxed out. But anyway. So another reason why I'm not as concerned about this is that people like things, right? People take things for granted. And I think once they understand what's going on here and what they risk losing, it's the reason that they gave up on trying to repeal ACA and Obamacare, is because people like it. People like not being kicked off their healthcare plan, right? People like it. So what I think what is going to hit people the most, I think, is the student loan piece. The student loan piece is huge, and so is the Title I piece. The U.S. Department of Education, of course, distributes the Title I funding. About half of all United States schools receive Title I funding, and it is split pretty evenly between rural and urban schools. It's about 40-60. So his voters, his deep red states, all that, they're going to lose Title I funding, which is going to be more significant than the IDEA funding. And again, once they realize the chaos that this is going to cause with the student loans and all that, and Pell Grants and all these different things, people like things. And I read a poll that it was like something like 65 or 67% of people do not want the U.S. Department of Education abolished. So there's that, right? There's a provision in this executive order that says they're going to maintain the two things that they want to maintain are the student loan things or the student grants, I forget which one, and special education funding. That certainly reading that, you're like, okay, well, maybe not all hope is lost. But I have seen nothing in the past 10 years that gives me reason to believe or confidence that any of them have our kids' best interests at heart. There's nothing, right? There's not been one thing that he's said or done that gives us reason to count on that. It's in the executive order. We shall see. Again, this whole thing has to go through the courts anyway. Only Congress controls the checkbook, and only Congress can establish agencies like this. So, I was at the Acme the other day, and when I was walking into the store, I walked past this car, and it was a car that had it was a sedan, so it had like a back ledge, with a window. And on the back ledge, as a decoration, was a red hat, right? I guess they really want people to know who they are and what they stand for. So there's this red hat on the back ledge, and besides the name, and it said 2024, and it said the rules have changed. And that really made me think, because we need to not cower. The rules have not changed. The Constitution has not changed. So the rules have not changed. And we need to keep reminding them of that. Okay. Education has always been left up to the states. I'm not going to go over that law again. I did a blog post on it explaining it because I'm tired of talking about it. It's a lie when they tell you that they're returning education to the states, because it's always been up to the states. There are things we can do now to fight back, and I think we should fight back. And there are things we can do now to work on protecting your IEP, work on amping it up a little bit, leveling up with your advocacy efforts, so that if changes do come down, a lot of people are worried about, okay, well, there's not going to be any federal oversight of IDEA, which is not entirely true. They've said it's going to go under HHS. It was under HHS from 1975 to 1980. I was a kid. I don't know what that looked like. But you have to remember that the federal oversight of IDEA has been nothing more than an idea. And I don't mean, no pun intended, but it's always just been a concept. It's never really had a lot of teeth. I don't know a lot of people who have filed OCR complaints. I mean, in my 15 years of advocacy, I want to say maybe on average one a year. And I know that I have seen a lot more IEPs than most people. But this whole leave it up to the states, our special education and IEP battles have always been at the state and local level. I don't expect that to change. There are some states who get it right, and there are some states who are terrible at it. And the fact is that 50 years of federal protections have not made them good states to live in anyway, right? Like if you look at a big state like Texas, they were open about, we are going to add this arbitrary figure that schools can't have more than 8.5% of their kids on IEPs. Like that's wildly against IDEA. And they just did it out in the open for years and years and years. And arguably they're still doing it. And they withheld state funding. If you had more kids than that on IEPs, you lost funding. So again, the federal oversight didn't make people do the right thing. People are going to do the right thing if they're good people. We need to remember that our kids' teachers, our clinicians, our related service providers, all those folks went to school to help disabled people. Now, I can imagine that's pretty demoralizing to go to college for that, get into a school setting, and you're not being given the resources to do your job. But at their core, they're still good people. And we need to remember that. And again, our IEP battles have always been at the state and local level anyway. Unless you filed an OCR complaint, unless you went to due process and then ended up in federal appeals, which is very few IEP parents, this whole notion of federal protection it was nothing more than like this pie in the sky ideal. That said, that doesn't mean that I'm in favor of this dismantling, because the U.S. Department of Education performs some very valuable functions. The guidance letters, OSEP and OSERS, and all these different agencies. I did a webinar for them several years ago on assistive technology in your IEP, and the parent training information centers and things like that. They provide a lot of valuable funding and a lot of valuable services. And so I'm not of the mindset that they should just be abolished because it's a whim. There's no rhyme or reason. Because again, if the only reason that they're giving is that they want to return education to the states, that's not a valid reason, because it's always been with the states. Okay. I'm going to share some links. I've created a resource page, which actually that I can put, can I comment? No, I can't. Can I comment on here? I guess I can't. I created just like a hub page on my site where I've been updating with the most current information, what's going on as far as actions, and I have some action items that you can take with your IEP, things that you can start doing this weekend so that you are in a position to keep your services. If funding cuts happen, and when funding cuts happen, of course, service and support cuts are not far behind. If those things happen, you're ready to combat that with data and information. So the other thing is, I would say, and I hate to recommend this, and 15 years ago, I would have punched myself in the face for recommending this, but if you have the means and you have the ability, I would look into private services, maybe not now, but for the future. So whether that's your insurance plan, whatever, I would look into what you can do for your child privately, because schools are struggling now. And I expect morale to take a hit and funding to take a hit. So again, you just might want to look into it if you can make that happen for your child. So, if nobody has any questions, I'm going to go get ready for my meeting and gather up my things. Everybody, just take a deep breath. We're all in this together. There's over 8 million children in this country with IEPs. So that means those 8 million kids each has 2 parents. They each have 4 grandparents. So if you multiply, that's 6 people. So each of these 8 million IEP students, that's 48 million people. That's, who have a personal vested interest in this. And that's not even getting into siblings and aunts and uncles and those who, care about our kids besides our immediate family. So again, hang in there. We got this. And it's going to be a long journey. So rest, Don't let your adrenaline get the best of you and the sense of urgency. I know what it's like to have this shocking information, and I was just as, I get it. It was a gut punch when I read it on my phone yesterday too. I was like, oh shit, it really happened. But again, he's not popular. His ideas aren't popular. People are mad that they're losing their jobs. They're losing a whole bunch of things. They're losing healthcare. The veterans are protesting him. I mean, everybody's protesting him. Save the dates. April 5th is going to be a big action day. And the first week of May, COPA is going down to DC. They're doing a Capitol Hill Day. So I'm going to be there. I hope to meet up with some of you there if you go. But there's lots to do. I'm also trying to come up with some new ideas besides the call your legislator, email your legislator, write to your legislator, visit your legislator. I feel like we need some out of the box ideas to kind of get their attention and get them on board with this. I'm doing a ton of product boycotting. I hope you all are too. And I think that that's the only way that we can get some of these wealthy donors to listen, is if it starts hitting them where it counts. So anyway, have a good weekend, and I will talk to you guys soon.
Thank you for listening to Don't IEP Alone with special education advocate Lisa Lightner. We're so glad you've joined us and would love to connect with you outside of the show. For more information about Lisa, the IEP Toolkit, and more ways we can help you in your process, go to adayinourshoes.com. From self-care tips to common IEP mistakes, there's even more to explore. Don't forget to rate and review the podcast and subscribe to never miss an episode. Until next time, don't IEP alone, and you don't have to.